You're listening to the Outsider Art and Occult podcast, Pragmagick. I'm your host, Keats Ross. I'm going to try to keep the intro here short because my guest on this episode, the wonderful Niish, and I have a beefy 2-hour conversation, non-stop goodness, and I'd rather just jump into it. But I'd like to update a little bit. I'm getting ready for a relocation to Denver, as most of you might know. This week is our last in Portland for, I don't know, the foreseeable future, but who knows where life will take us. But it's all very exciting. I'm very impassioned with, focus and fun and just accepting change and coming at it headstrong with a fervor that I once feel like I had tons of currency in. So it feels good. I feel new. Feel back to somewhat of my old self in the sense of, the future is bright. That said, had a very interesting couple of weeks. There was a popular occultist convention out here. I'm sure most of you know what I'm talking about. And I decided I couldn't afford to go to the convention, so I decided to busk out in front of it. Now, there was a couple of reasons why I did this. One of them was I hadn't busked in a long time, and I thought, as a Portlander and as someone who, runs a cult or a magic-based kind of podcast, I thought, it'd be cool to meet some people around maybe the convention. I had friends that were going. And to kind of show support in a way that I could share, some creativity with. So I busked in front of the convention with the attendants as they were going in. And it was real short. It was like 20 minutes. Tuning peg broke. Forgot a pick. And it was not my best performance, but I fucking did it. And I think that is part and parcel to where I am in my life right now. It just feels good to say you're going to do something, and you fucking did it. And this is where I met the wonderful Niish, and I got to meet her in person beforehand at the White Eagle saloon here in Portland. We had been talking for, a couple weeks beforehand through the internet. We met through mutual friends and other podcasts and whatnot, and it was so great to meet her, and even better to really pick her brain about the current state of the culture for 2 hours. So, slither here, there, weirdos and witches. Enjoy my wonderful conversation with Niish, and we'll be back in a week or so with Carl Abrahamson, live from Denver. Haunt on.
Well, I just want to start. You're in the wellness, and I understand that as a podcaster myself. I just want to say it was really great to meet you in person finally.
Oh, thank you. It really was. Yeah, we had a great week or so of continuous conversation leading up to it, and it was just so good to put a face to the name. And it was short, but I'm glad we're talking now.
Yes, it was short and potent.
Right.
At the White Eagle, which I might add is a new favorite place of mine. I love that environment.
So it's very special to me. I think it's the first weekend where me and my current girlfriend kind of decided that we were going to embark on a partnership. We stayed there.
Oh.
Yeah.
In the brothel upstairs.
In the haunted brothel. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that even makes it better for you especially. And I had never been there, I might add. So I had heard my friend Melanie, who was there, Melanie Poe, had told me that its history, but walking in and feeling its vibe and just the idea of what a pub should be, it offers. It's dark, it's comfortable, and it's got space for a band.
Yeah, and it's just that beautiful, like,
Victorian.
yeah, Victorian in the industrial district of the
Yeah.
East Side. It's like, I don't know, I think that's where my heart is in Portland, is the industrial East.
Yeah, I love it down there too. And I mean, oh man, Portland,
Yeah.
RIP. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, I have a candle in my heart for what Portland used to be.
I would love to hear more about that, because I wanted to, I don't mean to be linear, but I definitely have questions about the genealogy of Niish, And from what I've heard in different podcasts and different things, that, you're kind of Roma a little bit.
Yes, well, I have that. I don't have that blood in me, but I have that energy in me. And who knows? I may have that blood in me. I don't know.
Right.
But in the end, I have that blood in me as far as that gypsy feet kind of thing. I've lived in over 100 moves, over 100 moves. And that's with all of my fantastic estate, which is made up of old things, Victorian and antiquities, the vibe I like, lots of fringe and old things. And
Right.
so I'm not a tourist, so I like to go places and park. You know what I'm saying?
I
To really
do.
get the vibe. I'm not one of those people that goes to, I'm going to go to Paris and just be a tourist and see the Eiffel Tower and this and that. I need to spend, 6 months is usually my low end.
Right.
And then other places I've been years, like here. And I've come back to the Pacific Northwest twice.
That's so funny.
Because the weather heats. The weather, I love it.
Yeah. The weather especially. I'm from, I'm from the desert. I'm from, arid, low desert kind of. So this was the antithesis to my childhood. This
Yes. I always say if there's moss and fern, if that grows, those things grow, I grow. So
yeah.
But I will tell you, I have a soft spot in my heart for parts of the Southwest in America that I've lived in, and up in the Ortiz Mountains above a town called Madrid, and off-grid, off-road, and so it's high mountain desert, but it's magical. It's got this autonomy to it. There's, I don't know, people who know what that's like understand and get it. Otherwise, it's just hard to describe.
Yeah.
The big sky, and there's still a Wild West vibe out in those areas that I really like.
Very much, yeah. And what you were talking about earlier about this being the second time that you've lived in Portland, that's a synchronicity for us both, because this is the second time I've lived here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
When were you here before?
Around 2004 to 2007 or so.
So not to turn this on you, but I think this is a chit chat, and that's how I like to go. So what was the reason that you left the first time? Why?
The first time I left was to go to college in the Bay Area, which was just a travesty.
I hope you're a dropout. Are you a dropout?
Oh yeah, I'm I'm a reformed Protestant dropout.
Rebel gene rise.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly. And so that's why I left the first time. But it was also, I never really found a footing so much, or I didn't mean to be here the first time. So
yeah.
I was on a train to go to Seattle, and I sat next to a Mormon who told me that Portland was the Garden of Eden, and that it was it was heaven on earth, and you should just get off and check it out. And this was September of 2004 or so, and I got off and then ended up living here for 3 years. So
I love that story. That's so right up my alley.
Yeah.
That is great. It's interesting also with the Mormons saying it's the Garden of Eden. And certainly I think at that point in time, you still experienced old 2004, yeah, old Portland,
Yeah.
the last of it.
So it was definitely like on the verge of the native versus transplant kind of thing that was
Yeah.
starting to permeate. But I caught the beginning of that. But I left for the real like apex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, for me finally became when it finally became dead is really not that long ago. I mean, I can't even pinpoint a year. There was just all of a sudden, it was like a massive wave of tearing down all those beautiful old houses, and a place's character is in that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
now you drive around, there's people containers everywhere. It's the same old crap in any town USA everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And the ironic people that were being, and I say that in a snideish way, the Portland people, or the people that are moving here that were trying to be ironic, in opposition to the weirdness that was naturally here.
Mm-hmm.
So they were trying to be, I guess I always need to explain this, like normalish or a little bit grungish, to be in opposition to the real eccentrics, old time eccentrics that were here and could afford it here. Those people took over, and that's what Portland has become. The tech industry and the ironic hipsters that, that are being like the normal thing.
I mean, yeah, I feel that. It's definitely gotten under my skin the past couple of years, for sure. I never, because I did such a good job of, I create these little communities or these little, things that kind of flourish but not so affected, and it finally just came in, and I couldn't escape it.
I know. It's a sad situation. I've seen it happen in so many places I've lived, and I got, I don't live in Portland any longer, and I'm not a city person at heart, even though I was born in a capital city and I've lived in many big cities over the years. I always loved Portland because it didn't feel like a city.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it started to get that kind of taste to it. It was the reason why I chose Portland over Seattle, mind you. Seattle feels like a city. It's a beautiful city, don't get me wrong, but it had all the trappings of that without this kind of comfy, beautiful small town aspect that Portland was offering, with the weirding ways and the old timers that were completely themselves, no matter what. Yards that were wild, goats and all this stuff that's still there. There's all that still there, but the
Right.
people are the people that were living on a certain budget that were really artists have been pushed out.
Yeah. I think it got to me specifically on William Street or in North Portland when they were tearing down houses left and right, and they tried to put in a new Seasons, which has already raised the market value of that predominantly black neighborhood, pushed everybody out, and it was, I gave up. I think that's I think that's a good way to put it for me. It's not that I stopped caring, I just stopped working against it in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, at this point I see it and recognize it. And there were other places where I was more invested in trying to be vocal about the change, especially about tearing down old houses. I only try to live in old houses. I only try to own them. And usually they're in ghettos where I can afford it. And it's not even a matter of affording it. It's the beauty of old buildings that are built well.
Right.
There's real plaster, real joined wood, all the materials. You can just start with the materials alone, the bones of a house, and work from how beautiful details were back in the day. Even in poor shanties, there are amazing poor shanties around, and then move forward to the patina of age and how they pick up this kind of wood picks up a great patina,
Yeah.
and all that. And so my heart was in saving those things and showing people that my whole life that these things have value. And on another,
Hello?
living in old houses, this is a form of recycling. So, you hear these people, modern people.
Oh, you're cutting out a little bit in this last little bit. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Did I fall out?
Yeah, I fell out a couple of times.
I don't even know where I was. I was on a rant,
Yeah,
Keats.
the wood patina. You were getting.
Oh man, I did go on from there.
Oh, it was great.
Uh yeah, so it's a recycling also.
Right.
Did that get picked up?
It's a form of
Yeah.
recycling.
Yeah. And so and people that seem to be really proactive about that these days are living in modern houses with modern materials and spewing all this green bullshit while they're having that experience. And then the rest of us that are, people like us that admire these old structures for their character, which are really participating in a form of recycling by living in these spaces and not participating in the fuckery that is the new housing industry.
Right.
Somehow we get lost in the fold of all that.
It just feels so naked to me living in something so new like that. There's like, like all the lives that were lived in these wooden structures, all the like resonance that permeates, and it's like buying what I call dead threads, or like
Yes.
recycled clothing, stepping in old shoes, and
Yes.
it's this beautiful way to kind of walk in a haunted pageant almost with the life that lived before,
Yeah, well, it's definitely connecting to place and space, and adding to it. It's also not toxic in the same way that all the new materials are. And again, it's that hand craftsmanship. Old houses had people that actually had to plaster the walls, lath and plaster the walls, none of this drywall crap. And I can go on forever, but so Portland is one beautiful old house at a time.
Yeah.
Losing its character. And with that, the new people, mostly the tech industry, are coming in, and it's, that whole thing is happening, and it's bad. My friend Amy Putney, lifelong friend, was in town, and it was a sad situation for me to walk down the street with her and have everyone gawk at us. I was like, she noticed it, I noticed it. It's like, of all places, this is like known so well for being a place for eccentrics and the weirding with the Y. And there we are, the real deal. And you've met me in person. I'm authentic.
Oh yeah.
And there, we've got people staring, and little kids dropping their mouths, in their iZods or whatever the hell they're wearing these days, and those North Pole whatever jackets. And it was like, this should not be happening here. They wouldn't have done that had I had been wearing like big earplugs and was somehow super, I don't know, maybe in a tie-dye,
like yoga pants.
Oh yeah, don't get me started on yoga pants.
It's a real thing.
Oh, it's a scourge across the land.
What's funny though? This is analogous to a big topic that I wanted to talk to, because we've talked about it before, but this is almost exactly analogous to the state of quote unquote occulture.
Yes.
It's almost the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, of course, this is the as above, so below aspect of it, right?
Right.
the general public and the yoga pant culture, the strip mall culture, the people container culture, the ironic hipster culture, and then below we have the occult. And the same thing is going on within the state of a culture in a different way and at a different level, but energetically it is mirroring as always.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the state of correspondence within that. But it's almost, yeah, because I can see it even in different factions of, aesthetics, even too,
Oh yeah, you can immediately, well, everyone's a facsimile, and especially
Right. And
so
a
in
uniform.
absolutely. I can spot a COS Satanist anywhere. I can just go down the line. I can spot modern day Masons that are into the occult aspect of it and, bless their hearts. I can spot them though, without having to see the rings. I can spot the Typhonian. Everyone is presenting themselves without understanding, and you would think occultists would understand this, but they're just all wearing it on their sleeves.
Right. Oh, you dropped out.
Yeah, I'm expecting this with us for some reason. We're kind of radical.
Yeah, we are.
Where did I drop out?
So it was right before the expecting us.
Uh, right. I can see now. I can see the uniform that all these different factions of occultists are wearing and just spot them. And it's probably best that what I said dropped out anyway.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I think
But
you always say it with a certain form of respect, you know.
yeah. I don't want to pick on anyone in particular, any group in particular, but they all are visible, and the members are wearing that visibility, like titles and like memes.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Meme magic. But it is like, I mean, it gets to me. It really does get to me. And you're right. I'm in a place of, deep magical practice, and I keep coming to this idea that, like, why does it get under my skin? Why does
Hmm.
this affect me so much? It shouldn't. And I think it just comes from a lot of this ideology from certain things that just shakes down people. I was talking to a friend on the last episode about, the need for doubt in any kind of spiritual belief you have,
Hmm.
and how essential doubt is. And these people peddle and everything but, you know.
I know. Oh, jeez. Oh, it's so true. Yeah, there's a lot of, I hate to say this, and I certainly witnessed it recently. There's a lot of uh, man, this might sound ugly. There's a lot of herd mentality within the outsiders,
Right.
you know, and especially in the world of a culture where one should be, that whole idea of know thyself and this whole kind of hermitage, this hermit. I mean, this is how one does evolve, and this is where most of the occult studies should take us, away from groupthink, away
Yes.
from
Yeah.
participation mystique. And what do we see? We see a lot of that now.
Yeah. I mean, it's even amazing to me that there's just in an obviously uncredentialed, study where there's, experts or just, or practitioners or people that have, read enough books. That's where the knowledge comes from.
Hmm.
You too can do this. Like, I don't.
Yes. Well, I was privately talking about on, and this is part, I don't mind saying it in public like this, but
Mhm.
there is most of the teachings anywhere in all the mystery schools came somehow, some way through a sense of channeling, right? Energy.
Right.
And so this idea, this whole pyramid that's been built over certain practices is intriguing to me. And I say this also as a person who's gone through many different organizations and climbed up various ladders and reached adulthood and all this. And in my search, in my journey, and in my openness to learn more about myself, because this is what it's about. And I have not found one, air quotes, even though I don't do them in real life, order that offered me anything I couldn't find on my own. The one thing I will say that I really admire, though, in those processes is there is still within some of them this idea of secrecy and this idea of not blaring it out to the world. I just got initiated by so and so at a private event that I had to pay so much money for, like
Right.
that kind of crap we're experiencing these days. Is sickening to me and anything but magical.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the beauty of a lot of this, quote unquote, I guess it would be more master apprentice these days, but back when and under true spiritual practice, everyone was a student. You know what I mean? And like everyone was
How many
learning
times
from each
did
other.
that come up at the White Eagle, especially? How many times? I mean, that was like the theme for me this weekend is that in particular one should never really step out of student role. I think they're doing, if you're really a seeker and a journeyman spiritually, that's a cornerstone in your foundation.
Right. But people want to be told a certain thing, or they want certainty, and I think that's the big thing that bothers me, are the people that can give it to them, because it's not honest,
right. Those that rise to power.
Right. Yeah, it total
True.
cliche added, total it's something that doesn't, not just in a culture, it happens everywhere. It's just kind of humankind when it comes to that. But
it is, but again, when I say journeyman, it is not a sexist thing. I'm clearly a woman, and I clearly adhere. I identify as a female, by the way, in this modern world, or a potato chip, whatever.
Sure.
And so this idea of pay to play kind of gets me as well. There's something, I don't know. I've always had a distaste of it. I've been in many orders where, there were monthly dues. And of course, then sometimes you get to a certain level and then, they're laughing like the suckers at this level and underpay, and we don't. And I think that the first order I got to was like that. I made an adulthood and then didn't have to pay. And they were making fun of everyone below that. And they clearly all came up through that. Was one, and I was in my 20s, and that was very eye-opening to me. And from that point on, it was this, the thrill is gone.
Yeah.
With orders, although I did join many orders since then to get information and learn about myself, as I said, but it seems to be, you shouldn't have to pay dues. People should not have to pay monthly dues that are outside of paying for equipment, space, for places for organization to meet, that stuff that's above that, when we're talking about the realm of spirituality, is completely, absolutely unethical, in my opinion.
Yeah, and maybe, yeah, because even just room and board for the teacher is one thing, or
right, paying for stuff that is all of the overhead and all of that is one thing, and then we see it in Christianity all the time.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not picking on the occult world, it's all over. Well, Christianity is I think locked into the occult world too, in my opinion.
Well, I was going to say, it seems, I don't know, there's something specific about a culture, about maybe the kind of old guard of it that's, Ayn Randian a little bit. And,
yeah.
It's a little bit like, that's why capitalism works so well with the occult, because what do people want? They want wealth.
Right. They want love and money.
Yeah, exactly. So here's how to get them,
It's so basic.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So those things put me off. And having been initiated a million different ways at this point, good and bad. Oh, I so many different experiences. I now have come to the conclusion that it's all bullshit, and I just want to say that loud,
Oh yeah.
caps and underlined. And I'm sorry to people. I want to extend an apology for people that are really honed in on that and moving through those processes, because there's a level of conviction there and moving through it. And I just have at this point worn out by that, and having gone through that in a few different ways, just there's not, it all seems to in the end be kind of the same.
Yeah.
And as you and I have talked about, all the information from the mystery schools in this day and age is available. It's all out there. There are free occult libraries there. I mean, and if you want to buy beautiful books, and I buy beautiful books. I always buy the best books from, Scarlet Imprint, Zoannon,
Mm-hmm.
Ouroboros, all the great publishers and binders, because I find those books sexy and I like them.
And then their
But
art. Yeah.
they are art. Is any of the information new to me? Absolutely none of it's been new. I think the newest piece of information I got in modern publishing has been probably the which one? Probably like the Dragon Book of Essex or something like that from Chumley. Chumley's information has
Oh, you just dropped out.
newest information on the market for me. So yeah, I was just naming a specific author, and
Yeah,
that's all right.
Chun-Li.
Yeah.
How do you spell that?
Chumby. I'd have to.
Okay.
Oh God, isn't this terrible? I'm on the spot.
I just wanted to make sure it was like one word. I can find it.
Andrew Chumley. Yeah, I have everything that Zoannon released of his, and it's a step away, but it's not terrible. I read a book a week. I'm a nerd.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I aspire to that. I'm usually like 2 a month. If
That's still good in this day and age. So that's still good. I live a monastic life.
Right.
I'm grateful for it, and so I have the time to read, and I love to read, and I do. It's part of my praxis.
Yeah, I love that. Me too. It's got to be maybe even the heart of it. Reading
Yeah.
and writing.
Yes.
Some like exercise outside of it. Yeah, totally. Can we talk about, like I was wondering earlier, like a little bit of genealogy? I'd love to hear about some of these experiences you've had that have led you to this monastic lifestyle.
Well, you'll have to drive the questions.
Of course.
And I'll be as open as I feel I need to be.
So I think you've said in other interviews that your mother was a bit witchy. Is that?
Oh, very. Yeah.
What was it
absolutely.
like? When did that come into your purview? Like when?
Well, okay, so let me give you the genealogy on this.
Yeah.
On her side of the family is where the Masonic side of my family is, that has a solid Masonic lineage going back to 1100. The paper trail is there.
Wow.
It's all there. This is not headspace. This is not talking. It's not fronting. It's all there. And which is why I chuckle a lot at how people get all huffed and puffed about that kind of stuff. I am personally not one. And so, but within all of that, we had the East, my mom was an Eastern Star and an Odd Fellow and all that. And I have the paper trails there. And some of that paper trail is out on the internet because I've taken photos of the beautiful showing, like the dues, when my great aunts and grandmothers were the first Odd Fellows, the dues were $1 a year in like 1919 or something. And so there are photos of some of the stuff I put out on the internet that are just fascinating, old documents that aren't affecting any modern workings,
Right.
Different grandfathers' aprons and all that stuff, silver and stuff from the family. And So there's that side. I come out of that from my mama's side, and plus there's also Indian blood on her side, Sac Fox. So there's this, which is I consider kind of folkish.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I will say, like my Uncle Forrest is always very proud of that aspect. And there's a lot of within the magical communities with North American Indians. There's a lot of it's a matter of pride for some occultists because there's some Rh negative blood there. There's a thing there, and people can just go down that rabbit hole. So the ceremonial stuff is what I'm getting at with the Masonic stuff, because the Masons are ceremonial, and so that's all there. And I had a real sense of that growing up with my Omo. Her grandmother, whom I had a relationship with, she died, I think, when I was 13. She was from the, Edwardian period, turn of the last century spiritual period. And I'm sure you heard me talk about her because I loved her.
Yeah, I was going to say you kind of adapt some of that style too.
Yes. So she had all that ceremonial aspect to her. And I'm sure there's some church affiliation with her, but I never saw it. I never once encountered a church with these people. Never. I was never drugged to it. Nothing like that. So I'm sure if you would have asked them, they would have said something, maybe. I don't know.
Right. But
However,
it wasn't a big deal.
It was never brought up. There was nothing in the house that would suggest it, none of it. And so, but she had really interesting ways in the kitchen, and like superstitions that are, were real strange, leaving offerings to nature spirits and stuff. It was so just weird. Or she'd throw out, if some milk was bad, she had a certain way she'd throw it out into her little garden outside the kitchen window. And she had this little saying about the littles and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
And when she was cooking, I remember specifically she was talking to me about stirring, one way or another, and stirring in her intent and stuff, folkish things like that. Also, with chickens, feeding chickens prior to getting specific energies out of the eggs. So if she had something she was intending on, like say, I don't know, a family get together, and it was something to do with, a calm family get together and all that, she would feed them intentional stuff like lavender flowers and stuff to get the outcome of the eggs. Wow. Right? Stuff like that. Yeah. That was folkish. That's why I call it folkish.
What region was this? What part of
that is Iowa.
Okay.
That's Iowa.
Cool.
And so she had that. There is all that kind of folkish stuff there too. And on top, remember, these are Masonic people, so there were the lodges and the ritual ceremonial stuff that's tied in there.
So was that a lot of intuition on her part?
I don't know where it was. I remember she had it was like also she was in this was like all about the suffrage movement. Her sister, Orpha was her name. Her sister was about who never got married, and I think went for some sort of law degree or something, but she never, she must have been a lesbian is what I'm saying. And because she was beautiful, and she certainly had the opportunity, I'm sure, but she didn't get married, and was interested in legal stuff, and suffrage was a conversation. And so there's that stuff as well. I lost track.
Oh yeah, I was just wondering if if there was, we talked about it being a little bit of intuition, but you said that there was
Oh, the spiritual movement
Yeah,
of the turn of the last century into the 1920s and all that.
right.
Yeah, I think that they must have been somewhat informed by that movement that was happening. Blavatsky's happening then,
Totally. Sir
and
Arthur Conan Doyle.
yes,
Yeah.
all of that became really the modern New Age movement.
Hmm.
And so I think that there was passively influence there. Nothing that was blatant, and certainly nothing that would get them shunned, or they were all in good standing in the community, which also was a big deal in the Masons. I don't know how that is now, but it certainly was always a big deal in the
Hmm.
Masons, to have a good standing. And of course, the Masonic situation's a brotherhood, and now it's co-op, but they take care of their own. There's a whole
Right.
vow in that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's so to me, that's what I think Masonic has really just become as a fraternal organization.
Well, in a lot of ways, yes, and so on the good side, yes, but on the bad side, it's just a clique too. So, but there are some people really bringing back the deep esoteric stuff, and I'm sure they've been there all along,
Hmm.
working at the higher orders, above 33rd, 32nd, because 33rd and 32nd are so similar, and working at the different orders, some that are known, some that aren't, and so I'm sure that's always been there, Keats.
Yeah.
I don't, I'm not really going to go there, and I don't want the evil eye on me.
No, totally. I absolutely get it. So moving on. I was kidding.
Yes.
So what were some of the books that made you branch off at a young age into kind of your own seeker isms?
Ooh, that's hard. I mean, early on, well, my mom would give me all these I remember early on, my mom gave me this book, The Witch of Blackbird Pond. And so I had that and worshiped that for a minute when I was very young, and stuff like that. She always gave me, well, mythology first was a big deal. My mama was insistent that we learn how to read and write like immediately. It was like a big deal. She really worked with us, and there was no baby talk. It was trying to educate us fast. So we were readers and writers, my brother and my cousin and I, very earlier than anyone else, as far as I had heard. And so I was reading pretty heavy stuff at a young age, and most of it started with early mythologies. So that stuff's there. But then she would give me really great fiction stuff, like The Witch of Blackbird Pond,
Hmm.
and then later, like weird encyclopedias of the weird and all that kind of stuff. There's a Time Life series that came out. All the mystical stuff.
I have
She
those in hardcover. Yeah.
Yeah, I have an original set somewhere
Oh,
packed
that's
away.
exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, in hardcover. Well, that's how they came, and they were like every other month or something.
Hmm.
And so she had all that stuff. She was just very, had that mystical, witchy vibe to her anyway. So everything that came my way through her had some sort of witchy vibe, was always witchy. And but as far as actual magic books, although I want to say I think the mythology is the core.
Yeah.
I think I first encountered, geez, what was it? It was something juicy on her shelf. Yeah, I can't, oh geez, I can't recall right now. But then I got a hold of I was getting a hold of, like, the Golden Bough
Right.
and all that stuff that was available in the 70s. There wasn't a lot. And of course, then I talked about this a lot, so I'm not going to talk about it here. But then when there was not much else, Scott Cunningham was on the
Oh,
shelf.
right. Yeah.
So it was enjoy. Although that was I was never into Wicca. I've always been put off by the term Wicca, and the Wiccans I encountered in the world, even though I know a lot, I don't know why. There's something about the term and the ones I've encountered in the world that just weren't me. They weren't my tribe.
Right.
And so, but I was reading anything that would come onto the shelf that I could get my hands on. And so Scott Cunningham and Valerie Worth and people like that. Of course, Janet and Stuart Farah, who became friends of mine in the 80s, late 80s. And, Doreen Valiente and all those. That stuff started happening in the 80s for me. The Satanic Bible. I lived in San Francisco in the 80s, down across Divisadero on California Street, 2 blocks over. So I was like 4 blocks from the Black House.
Wow.
In San Francisco when it was still standing, when Xena was the high priestess. And so I have a lot of good San Francisco stories in this period. And I was a full on out, like I was full on into, I've always been, my friend Stanley Love, who just died, tells his friends, I'm hearing these stories now because he just died, and some of his good friends over the years I don't know were like, oh, you were the little witches, you were the little witch. Oh, he's telling them when we were little. So it's like I've always called myself a witch. There was never a time I didn't. And so I didn't need books to tell me that. And I think right now where I am with this, Keats, is I'm rebelling against all the books, even though I've been informed by them.
I just wanted to get there. Yeah. It sounds like, so what you've been talking about, there's something you said earlier that made me, this is something I've been kind of toying with, and I've always kind of had a liking to, is taking, fiction or taking works of art, especially people's folklore, mythology, and incorporating that into spiritual practice. Because what's the difference?
Exactly. Well, and at this point, like we've been saying, these things, there was a big point when mystery schools served a real purpose, and they really should now, if we could hone back in on that. But to what you see are orders, and like we started this conversation out, everyone's wearing it. You can see, I can see everyone's titles and badge by the clothing they're wearing, and everything. People are posting photos on social media of their magical workings in process.
Yeah.
Come on, please. How neophyte is that?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I get maybe posting a photo of your altar, even though I would never do that.
Yeah, I used to do that. That was a bad idea.
It's terrible. Neophyte's the word for it. It's very bad.
Yeah, I mean, I also was working with Santa Muerte, and I think at the time it was in my idea that she wanted more love, like she needed to be seen more. She needed to be.
And the thing is, you can give the love without posting your working. So, like I said, post photos of the altar that aren't in work at that moment. That's a different situation. But posting images or video of your spells as they're happening, of your working as they're happening. Come on, 101 in secrecy.
Yeah. So, what are some other things that you've seen that are big no-nos? As far as you're concerned, in the social media age,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not that person out there saying no, but I'm also saying this shows where you are on the path, I think.
Yeah.
And so it's not no-nos, it's just stuff I find repugnant.
There you go. I would almost choose no over that.
I know, I wanted to use that word.
That's a good one.
It's so 70s horror. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot. It's funny. Like, for example, there are people I've known, and you've seen me in person. It's not like I'm hiding. I've always been authentic to myself and have a sense of self, and you can't really pinpoint it, but it's different, and it's probably witchy, right?
Oh yeah.
And so, but I'm not, at the same time, I'm not
It's not loud or
I'm
like,
not ever, I don't have a big gigantic pentagram
yeah,
on, and it's loud in its own way, but it's loud in an eccentric way. It's this idea that I'm seeing on social media too, like this whole how to be a witch thing, and showing or how to be whatever, this type of occultist or that type of occultist.
hmm
And it doesn't even matter how to be a golf player. You have to have this clothing on. And I, I, I feel like at some point people need to transcend out of that and move beyond the identity with the physical realm to find a deeper layer of consciousness that is bubbling and turning. I get the idea of the sexy part of the occult. It's always been a major draw. It's a major draw for most people with heavy Pluto placement, you know.
yeah,
It's definitely dark and sexy, and I think it should remain dark and sexy and not crude and gross and overexposed. There should be veils. One should have veils. I don't want to see your nude ass. I want to see you dancing in veils. Give me Scheherazade, right?
yeah, okay, yeah.
I mean, seriously, it's
No, yeah, I dig that.
it's like presents a mystery. What happened to the air of mystery? The sea priestess from Dion Fortune, and I mean, it's there. The mystery's there, and to preserve it and to present it in such a way is part of the sacred act of it and honors it. The rest is just crude, in my opinion. And I hate to be this harsh, but it's just overwrought. It's like fast food for occultism's fast food now.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And that's why it was so refreshing to talk to you when we met and just kind of vent about this stuff because, yeah, it is unmistakably inauthentic.
Totally. It's the look of the facsimile.
Yeah,
And this is why I just adore you, because you're one of the people that's vocal about this.
right.
Some people you'll get, I have this conversation's been churning in me for a minute, you know. It's been a minute, and I'm talking about it, but I hear people saying to me privately, right?
Right. I think it's just because they conceive it as still such a small group,
When
maybe.
we're radical for speaking like
Right,
this.
exactly. And it's like that's not the case at all. I mean honestly, it's the wheat from the chaff kind of idea when it
Hmm.
comes to that. And I'm not really worried about the facsimiles and what they think I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Like I don't
Yes.
yeah.
Well, real practitioners are really practicing. Real magicians are doing real magic.
Yeah.
And that's happening. You bet your ass it is.
Yeah.
And so they're out there, and you know, thankfully we're out there. And it doesn't I'm not suggesting that there was a time in my life, let me put it this way, there was a time in my life and in my mother's life and in my grandmother's life when you couldn't show or be
Oh, you dropped out.
still there.
Yeah, there you are.
In my mother's life, because she was a child of the 60s, you know, one of those that you're starting to be able to come out in the spiritual movement. You could a little bit, but it was still like dress. People were they had to hide it,
Right.
so it
Yeah.
was like closet occultism, or you had to hide it through respectable orders that had a surface, and then there's behind the scenes stuff. And so now that it's not a taboo, right,
hmm
it's you know, rock out with your cock out kind of mentality. And
Wear it
and
for a day, see how it fits.
right. And so I think I'm all right. I know a lot of real practitioners that are completely eccentric, but you wouldn't. It's not like in a vague way. You know that they're practicing magic.
Yeah.
but they're not facsimiles, they're authentic. And you and I both know a lot of people like that. I'm one of them, you're one of them. You can see that there's something going on there.
Well,
And
I want to clarify. I know you're one of them, but I think one of the big things with me is that I've realized the more I learn about this, the more I do of this stuff, the less I actually know. So I'm not really coming from a place of, I know better. I'm coming from a place of I was where you are, and that's not the path, I think, if that makes sense.
yes, it
Yeah.
does make sense. And the point I'm making here is I know some people that look like you wouldn't question that this is a practicing magician,
Right.
and they that are real magicians, that are real. And so they, no matter what, are real deal. And I'm not going to drop names, but there's one in Portland that's really famous here, and he's got an amazing pedigree, and you will not question him.
Oh,
he's
yeah.
the But he is the real deal to the core, most intense magician I know. And you wouldn't question him.
I
I
think I
mean,
know exactly who you're talking about.
yeah. And so, I mean, he's famous,
Yeah.
and he's the real deal. So, but there's also nobody else who's gone to the extreme level in which he has in his praxis. I think to even, I mean, he owns it, and so he's in his own league. It's the facsimiles we're talking about. So I just want to keep reiterating this, Keats, because I feel it needs to be. I don't want to offend the real occultists we know and love that are still kind of present as it, absolutely present as it. I'm
Right.
talking about the hot topic people. I'm talking about, the gorgeous goddesses and
The witches of Instagram.
yeah, so Lord. It's these people. And so I constantly feel like I need to hone that in.
Yeah, I love it though. I really appreciate you just, saying it because I think in a lot of ways you've been able to in like different podcasts on Nox Mente and Cruising with Steak, other places I've heard you've been able to touch on it, but you haven't been able to really, you know,
Rant.
rant about it. And like that's what got me so excited. It was like, yes, I want to hear that. What? Give me more. Yeah.
It's yeah, so there's all that. And I feel like now with the occult, so just driving in on this state of culture, I feel like a lot of people that are, and don't mistake anything I'm saying here. If you go down the road, the path, you go down the path. And so it behooves you to understand what the hell you're doing, because this is real. This is real business. So you can go down it thinking, you know, I look gorgeous in a hot topic, bathing suit with my really cool occult tattoos and my dyed hair, and you start practicing magic. Well, you're practicing magic, and it's going to happen. So you better learn what you're doing fast.
Mm-hmm.
And because magic is real, and affecting our environment through manipulating it is very real. And then summoning on entities is very real. And so this is where I've talked about in other places where you do need to do the time and do the self work and do the reading. And some people do need these structures. They need these hierarchical structures where they're getting formal initiations to move through the process. I honor that 100%. And I think that a lot of people need to get that. So the whole solitary movement, whereas it's beautiful and good, and that's definitely where I am at this point. I still understand the laws of nature. I understood them before, but I really understood them when I started to get into different practices of magic. And so I am very respectful of these energies and understand the power of banishing and the power of creating your circle, cutting you out from the collective, and the power of a triangle and putting something in that. And, we could go down the magical realm and talk about any of that, but it's all out there. I have been in the presence of people that just started calling in all manner of things without even cutting an imaginary circle in their head. And it's like, man, the wind is a spirit. I mean,
right. I mean, yeah, I think, was it Dr. Stephen Skinner, the Enochian
Oh,
guy?
yeah, he's fantastic.
Yeah, I remember him mentioning that. It's like, you're about to do magical work and you didn't shower,
Exactly. Right. You did. Oh, that's just the beginning. You didn't shower and you didn't, put on a little bit of coverage over your most delicate of whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like you're presenting yourself to this, wondrous unseen force, and you're going to go looking like, you just rolled out of bed, don't give a shit. They're not going to listen to you.
And this even goes for the really super soft stuff, like say the friendlier stuff, like the Jupiter, the Venus stuff, calling in and doing some love stuff. There still needs to be respect there.
It's intent, right? Yeah. It's like you go through like every part of it with intent. You got to, like, everything has got to be a ritual in and of itself. Yeah.
Well, and I can't remember who it was. Oh geez, who was it? It was somebody, because it's not my own, but I've been saying it for years, but it was somebody who said it to me in person. It might have been someone like, it was a Wiccan for sure. It might have been someone like Selena Fox or someone way back in the day, but that a thought is a spell, right? And we know this.
Yeah.
So, and that whole idea. But at the time I was quite young, this is the 80s. I was young, and sinking into that idea at that time really made sense to me in a different way, having someone say it to me from that stance, from that standpoint. And so now I've said it over the years many times, because there's so many people that are professing magic, this and that, and how they're doing it. And then you listen to their language and you look into their lives, or you observe what they're doing, and you think, man, basic, a thought is a spell. Thought forms brought into physical manifestation through words. This is a high act of magic, and we need to, I observe how that plays out. And so sloppy magicians get sloppy results, if not destruction.
Yeah, I mean, and to be quite honest, I've been through that heavy. I've definitely, I don't know. I think I was doing more to break down, and it worked that way, but it broke more down than maybe I necessarily needed at the time, or I thought. But yeah, and I could trace it back to just being very careless, I think, in the beginning.
But at least you learned in a good way. I mean, some people are summoning Astaroth, and
right, no.
and they're being sloppy in those ways. It's like, okay, yeah. you're in a different level here, babe.
Yeah, it's even just like, if you have to me, it's like base psychology, in the sense that if you think you're summoning, some immense unseen power from another place, and you're ready for it, that scares me more than you actually doing it, in a way.
Yes. And then understanding the difference between invoking and evoking and eso and exo,
right.
And some of this stuff that you hear in the sloppy language from people. I was looking at an Instagram famous, I want to say that, but they had like, I don't know, 50 to 100,000 followers, which may not be that big, but it's huge, since I have like 120 or something, and I have like 100 maybe, I don't even know. And of a lineage. And so it was, this cute girl, very cute, and all the language around all of it is just so damning like that. It's I just one post after another, and I'm looking at it going, whoa. The pictures are all beautiful and pretty and staged and all the little filters, and she is beautiful and prisoning, her kind of, I guess, Sabrina-esque type witch image, and then teaching. She's got a website and she's teaching, and I'm looking at her language on her casual posts, and I'm reading the language on the casual posts, and I'm like, man, not a witch, not a witch.
Right.
So this is your casual side, and you're presenting this kind of language, and then you're teaching. You have all these people following you, and you're telling people how to do this and that magically, and somehow the people that are following you aren't putting this together, and you're doing a disservice.
Yeah. So this brings up a good point. We've talked about this too. With that, is that these, there's people I know that are doing classes, or are teaching kind of to the general public, or really whoever will pay. And
yeah, right.
People do pay, but
there's a sucker around every corner, as the old carnies used to say.
They're teaching things that they don't necessarily believe in. It's almost like they're getting paid to intentionally spread bad magic on their behalf. It's almost diabolical,
Yes. Yes, it's beyond irresponsible.
Yeah. But it's like, they don't believe in the magic they're about to teach, or they don't care for it. They don't think it's a big deal. So I just wonder, like, if you're starting out your journey with a teacher that's, teaching you something they really could give two shits about, like, they're setting you on a really long and arduous journey.
Yeah. And there is something to, and as you said earlier, there's baptism by fire. We all go through it.
Right.
We all make mistakes to learn, but make the lesser mistakes, before you summon, Paimon, learn how to have a relationship with maybe the 7 planets and work planetary magic.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And then you can go into the goetic stuff, and if that's what you're so called to do. But even dealing with the earth spirits and earth and elementals, I get back to it. The wind to me is a deity. It's a deity.
Yeah.
It's a deity. It's there's sentience there. I do not care what science is trying to wrap around that or not. I call the winds, and I do it respectfully, and I get the winds without fail. It works every single time. And just working with natural elements and understanding waves of being. And, other people talk about this, like the spirit of place. That's a big deal too.
Yeah.
And this ties into the whole cryptid universe of like the Bigfoot, Sasquatch stuff, all this, these things don't want you hunting them. Like, what the hell?
Right.
Why are you hunting? If they clearly wanted to be seen, they would be seen.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I totally get what you mean. Yeah.
And that traps. So, I mean, when we're talking this, Bigfoot's as real as Paimon, or, any of them. Bigfoot's as real as anything else anyone's conjuring, which is hilarious to me that people can, from the occult world, laugh about the cryptid world. It makes me laugh.
Right.
Because you stand back far enough, or up far enough, or below far enough, you start seeing that this is all the same stuff. These are energetic signatures in our universe that we're experiencing. People experience them, and the more people experience something, the more psychic energy gets tied into it. The more people talk about it, the more psychic energy gets tied into it, and they grow. They become fed.
It's the egregore, or the thought forms that, and I do believe that to a degree. I mean, I call it the Freddy Krueger principle. right?
Yes. That's a great example.
Yeah, it's like the more everyone collects. And I think that's why, to bring it back to, say, the guru culture and occultum, it's
Hmm.
like, that's you're getting people to basically maybe charge your sigils in a way.
Uh, well, in the end, I'm definitely seeing that. And there is, so on this, which
Hmm.
is, I think, the controversy of it, I think there's a sad underbelly rising of the cult of personality, right? Cult of
Hmm.
personality. It's always there. It's always there. But there is something about that's turning me off on a way deeper level than young people. And young doesn't mean age. Young people with the occult. I don't care how old you are. Just people newly getting into it.
Sure.
Neophyte. Then there's these people that actually understand it and are adept for sure, and true magicians that are taking advantage of that aspect. And there's something in ethic, there's something just that just bothers me on an ethical level. It comes to the carny mentality about, there's the goal of the carny was always to separate this Joe from the $5 in his pocket, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's the carny mentality. And so, and at least you expect this with a carny, right? You go in knowing that, like a casino, the house always wins.
Hmm.
You go in knowing these odds. So the guru culture is more sinister because they're somehow coming from a place seemingly that appears above that, and justifying their separation of this person from their money or their energetic flow, their life force. And that's nefarious.
Oh yeah.
And they're out there in all forms, and they're all over. And so it's interesting to watch. We're watching some people rise to power right now, Keats. And
Yeah.
so and I'm just standing back going, okay,
Yeah. Seen this
here we
before.
go.
Yeah.
Seen it before. And every time I've seen it before, it hasn't ended well either. And we can look at Crowley as an example of that.
Right.
It did not end well for him, even though, he's still worshipped and adored. And he certainly he really contributed to the greater well of stories and praxis and all that. And I think in the end, for me, he's the last of the great showmen, because he's a showman that was doing a lot of work that I think was valuable. For me, the Book of Lies is his best work. So I'm watching it now. I'm watching a few people come to power, one Patreon at a time.
Yeah.
One premiere
That's a good point. And then
worship
yeah.
at a time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and then there's people kind of enticing on metaphysics too, not necessarily in the occulture world. Like Jordan Peterson, right? And
Yes.
Jordan Peterson's whole thing is like almost bringing a mythology or a religiosity back into, the young adult male life or whatever. That's like the crudest explanation I've ever given him. But there is this need and this penchant, something happening in the air of people kind of turning towards a bit more of the unseen in their daily lives, or this need for faith and this like displacement as well. and I see it just being encroached in politics and culture and art. You know, I just see it getting
We'll look at it. Oh yeah, and
trampled.
art for real.
Yeah,
We'll look at like programs so separate from all this, but also tied into like kind of the self empowerment movement, all
right,
that. The Estes program that turned into like landmark cult, the landmark cult. Uh,
right.
so I,
I mean, we saw
people,
that happen with like, New Thought, or that former iteration of New Thought.
yeah. So
Yeah.
there's the people that are getting separated from their money, basically, and brainwashed or indoctrinated in, but they're going in with the best intent. I want to learn more about. I know there's something more out there. I've had this series of synchronicities or dreams. I'm just looking for more in life and more out of life, and they fall in to these orders. So they may have read someone's book, and then that someone you know has more to offer, and there's more pay to play. This is no different than a dime store gypsy selling you snake oil.
Right.
And whereas that gypsy knows what she's doing because you're buying her wares or his wares.
Hmm.
You're going and getting those consultations, right?
Right.
and and so it's this feeding on the masses that is terrible. And there is this sense of I deserve it, that, and the sense of entitlement where I deserve time for money and all this, that whole thing. And I see this in the overpriced art world too. As an artist, as a working artist, I have a real problem. I always underprice myself. It's terrible because I feel this. I feel really. I can't. I cannot charge absurd amounts of money for
Right.
my really well done handmade stuff I've done, and paintings and fiber arts. And I say that looking at the world of arts and being an artist for so long, and looking around at glued stuff when I'm hand sewing. And I mean, just I could rant about art all day. And I have a show where I'm talking about that. Anyway, so it's the same in the spiritual movement and in the metaphysics world, where there are people taking advantage of the fact that people are searching for more. And the disservice it does in the end for the whole culture is it brings in a backlash. And we see this backlash in the occult movement anyway. It brings in a backlash. So enough people get swindled in by crap, and or something that was good is built good. There's secrets there that need to be had, but they're, if you can't pay now, you're not going to make it.
Right.
If you get now, you're tapped out, or if you don't pay this month, you lose your whole access to this whole forum or this, thing, and you've been paying 2 years, or you've gotten up to, like, say, whatever degree, and you've fallen on hard times because your magic's not working. And I say that as a joke. But you've fallen on hard times for whatever reason, and you can't pay. I've been a member in organizations where that has happened, and they lose complete status, complete access, and have to come back in and work their way back up.
Hmm.
And to me, that is complete and utter. I can't even find a word harsh enough for that.
Yeah. No, I agree. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's sad because spirituality is something you can't give someone. You can't teach it. You can't. This is, again, one of those things where this is the self work. We need to do the work on our own. In the end, the work is on your own. You birth on your own. It could be said the mother's involved, and yes, and you die on your own. And it could be said the mother's involved there too. But outside of it, you're doing the work,
Hmm.
And this is an important aspect to all magical work. It's why the hermit is important. It's why the hermitage is important. It's why the monastic, and I'm saying that not as a Christian,
Right.
the time alone and spent with yourself is important. This is where you get the real initiations from self into understanding these other realms. You have to learn how to understand your body, get lucid in your dreams, learn how to breathe, learn how to be still, just still and quiet your mind. I mean, these are things that will start to inform you when you encounter shysters out
Yeah.
there, shysters promising initiations and secret rites and all that that may appeal to the sexy side of you, but they're not actually, it's outer world stuff that's doing nothing for your inner world growth.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. That was profound, actually. I was gonna say
You
if
got
you
me in a ranting mood.
no, I loved that. I was gonna say there's something to learning rituals where the outcome is to figure out which ritual you need to do.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
it's those like ultra baby steps in a way. Because I think it might be safe to say anyone that's willing to pay X amount of money, uh, to go learn some kind of 101 basic thing, um, doesn't know what they want, and they don't know what they want to do with the knowledge. They might think they do, but I think 9 times out of 10, once you start embarking on that path, it's very different from what you thought you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the idea of donations. So I'm not anti money. I'm
Right,
not
right, right.
I like the idea of donations. When people start parsing it out, this is, you're paying this much for this much. Like 15 minutes and this is it. And they cut you off and cheap tarot readings and all that shit. And, I was reading tarot in the 80s and had been studying it since, a very long time. I knew tarot at a very young age. I got tarot deck and book, was gifted, a fantastic book and a tarot deck at a very young age, and got on board with that, with the astrology and all that, and was giving good readings at a young age. I still, at that point, was just doing donations, and I did it for years.
Right.
And because I got a sense of morality with the idea of pay me what you think this is worth and what you can afford. So if you can't afford $25 for a tarot reading and you're giving me $25 because you need some sort of external guidance somehow, and it's like your last $25, how can you ethically take that?
Right.
I just never could do it, Keats. I could not do it. And there's a point when I just stop. And of course, I read tarot for free all the time to friends and stuff. I do big spreads and I get into it, and we'll write out big sheet, pages of stuff that comes through and photos. And this is for friends or people really in need. And it's for free. This is a service I will do, sparingly, don't get me wrong. And some people have taken advantage of it where I have
Right.
to be like, oh, yeah. So, it goes across the whole board with this stuff. And, from tarot up to altars 101 or working with Jupiter, like it's, I like the idea of writing a book and making money off your book and doing tours talking about your book. That all seems legit to me.
Yeah.
Uh, I think with tarot and astrology, there should be, especially these days when you can pull up any generator on tarot.
Yeah, I was gonna say everyone knows how to do birth charts and tarot readings now.
It's all free online. I mean, Astrolata has the most intense, fantastic free service
Right.
on her page that gives you her every week. This is for free. You can pay to unlock like a year, but every week for free. It just goes day by day, opens another day, and it's a week slot where it's your personal aspects. You load into it your birth information, so it has your birth chart, and it gives you your specific aspects for each day, for a week, for free, forever. It's the best service I've ever seen. It's absolutely free. You don't need any more than that. That's what a professional astrologer would give you. And so, yes, you can pay through Astrolata to get readings and all that from other people, and they can synthesize the information for you, but it's there. So these services are out there. And so the people that are taking advantage of this, I've known astrologers that would get like Solar Fire or Kepler. This is when I was studying with Ina Stanley, and when she was first running online. Oh geez, what is it? I posted a picture of the CDs. It's that old. Online. Oh, I have to post.
It's like AOL or.
Oh geez, it was. I've got the CD over here. It was the precursor to Kepler University, and she was on the board of that. Robert Hand's on the board. Like it's really these are sensational people, and so we had to I went through that to get certified, because I was certainly into astrology way before that. My whole life I've been into it, and so I thought, okay, I'm gonna formally do this to get certified. And Stanley's goal was getting it accredited through universities and the whole thing that Kepler turned into. And so you had to get Solar Fire or Kepler or whatever. And I ended up getting Kepler. And some of my friends that were getting this software were doing, so in it, you get the canned stuff. You put in the information, you get the canned readings. They were literally selling the canned readings, not doing the synthesizing work for, this is back probably like the turn of the century, 2005 in there, maybe 2001, and selling those canned readings for like $100, where they just entered their information and would sell that. And it was like, man, you're not even looking at their stuff. You're entering the information and giving them the printout. Like, how ridiculous is that, Keith?
I mean, yeah, to me, they're just going to keep synthesizing it to make it more of a racket. And
it's totally a racket.
Yeah.
And so as a real astrologer, and back when I first learned, you had to cast out your circle. You had to get your compass out and draw a circle and quarter it. You had to look at all the degrees. You had to cast a real chart. And in the charts that you're giving people, you had to handwrite the house, the planets, and a lot of times astrologers back in those days would write on cassette tapes. They would do on cassette tape. And this was the real deal. And still a lot of those were doing donations, but some of them weren't. At least you were getting a real reading though. So there's something mercenary about going by donation with, in particular, tarot and astrology. It just makes me roll my eyes these days. And I've had a lot of discussions with tarot readers, about the $5 tarot reading and how much you feel like you should convey for $5. And, my point of reference here is the amount of money attached to it should not dictate what you actually say.
Right.
So
you should say whatever you feel or read.
The card comes out, read it honestly.
Yeah.
And instead of, if you want a deeper reading, $25. And I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's like old school huckster. Like, you're going to want to know what this last card is, but I'm going to need another 10 spot.
It's carny. It's carny all the way. And so, yeah. And again, everyone reads tarot these days. Everyone reads astrology.
And it's surprising to me, though, that there's a game to it. Like, I really feel that, like, it seems like the market is over flooding with tarot readers. Like, everywhere. There's now a tarot reader at every coffee shop, at every show that you play. There's there's just one there's a friend or someone in some nebulous circle that's always doing it. And yet somehow it's still working for them.
Oh yeah, people are always going to want to know. I want to mention his online college of astrology. That was what Ian Stanley started.
Oh, okay.
And because it just came, when I was when I was out touring doing the tarot thing, I was doing it at, like, I remember early raves. I'd get hired to go belly dance with my snake, and then come off the platform from belly dancing and do tarot readings. And
That's badass.
it was kind of, these are early days of raves, when raves first started. It was so fun. And so I was like, because at that time not a lot of people were dancing with a snake, and I was also I had learned a few different forms of dance at that point. I've always been a dancer, and I had my own thing going. But as I've seen now in the world, they call it tribal fusion or something. It's got a name now. It's got a TM name,
right?
And it's got like a grandmother to it, and all this. It's like, okay, but this was in the ethers, and people that were into temple dancing and Egyptian belly dancing and traditional Syrian dancing and the dances, the various dances of the Middle East, like I were putting this together and doing it, and we weren't calling it anything. It was just what it was. And I just happened to throw a snake in, and I've always loved adorning myself in beautiful jewelry. So, but it became a movement. Now it's got a TM. It's got like a grandmother who invented it. And, and it's like
the backstory of,
that started like, I think, a decade after I was out publicly doing it at raves, getting hired to do it and at ritual venues and stuff. And not just me. I'm not the only one. There were other girls doing it too. So I'm not saying I'm the grandmother. I'm not.
Right.
There were countless other people mixing up the methods. So the fact that that whole thing happened, and that's a good example with the occult too. It's like this, people are trademarking stuff that should not be trademarked and regurgitating. Any magician practicing right now, Keats, owes someone else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing's new on the table.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that's what irks me the most. It's like you
need to call this rant session at the end of this.
I'm going to call this rants. But yeah, it's the repackaging of kind of universal ideas. And at this point, I would consider a lot of them to be universal, because a lot of them are just so like apparent in every different faction of spirituality. And you're basically being paid to be a curator, and that's what these people are. They're like curating coincidence a lot of times too.
Yes, absolutely. Well, this is the thing is that no matter what, people are questioning, and at an alarming rate now. And I think this is why, aside from, Pluto's movement, obviously, but people are questioning, that people are asking themselves, there's got to be more to what's going on than, getting up and going to work every day, paying for this bill, going to bed, going out to a movie here and there, going out to drink here, and getting up and paying, the slavery of our daily lives, and which is getting worse. So people are starting to question that and starting to come to. And this is the real conversation for me in general in my life, is the idea of immortality and long lives. Because when we're talking short lifespan, you don't have a lot of time. It's easy, the old school indoctrination of work till you're 65, retire, and then go travel and do the stuff you love, that I think the boomers are the last to really involve themselves in that kind of thing. I mean, I certainly see Gen Xers participating in it, but I think, the millennials, like your generation, are really stepping away from it.
Oh, we're fucked.
But you're fucked in a good way, because there's enough of you that when it comes down to it, when the needle hits the record, it's gonna create something new. We need to get out of the slavery, and this is what the millennials are saying.
But what I mean is, like, I don't think we know enough trades. I don't think we have enough actual skills that,
Oh yeah, I get you. Right.
yeah,
Well, that's what went wrong with the apprentice programs and actually studying something of worthwhile. I
yeah.
mean, how many people back in the old days, I totally got off my other rant, but back in the old days, the it was the aristocratic person that had the luxury of studying. Well, first of all, education is not what it was in the old days. Only the extreme elite got a full-on well-rounded education in all the arts and all this. And then but in modern history, in like through the 1900s, Keats, are you there?
Hello? Yeah, I'm here.
uh
In the late 1800s?
in modern history, it was those people that were in the upper class that could afford to have like art education degrees and like kind of the more humanities stuff. And because there's not really, they could afford to do that and not have to be, they're not part of the slave system. And so now you see with education, there's a huge, everyone's an artist, right?
Right.
Everyone's an occultist, everyone's an artist, everyone is broke. You know, like,
Yep.
but but you know, by God, there's a million great painters in the world now. And so we lost track of the apprentice programs with actual art, with trades, real trades, and that could in some way benefit a person coming out of a system such as a schooling system that they had to participate in to for the betterment of their life. And now just the general education, which is all indoctrination, as you know,
Right.
system, is no one's getting anything real out of it. It's at a huge slant at most universities, so you're getting a lot of political slant. uh and you know, I think that the political stuff has its place in I mean, there were poli sci classes back in the day, and that's where it stayed. And
Yeah.
you know, you had art classes, but then you had like math and sciences and biology. You had all this other stuff that didn't all have a political slant. Now everything does, and so people are coming out with useless degrees and a political slant, and I'm talking young. And so it's like, I don't even know, to get a real political slant, I think you actually need to have a little more experience in living life.
Yeah.
So because up until a certain point, you're kind of just regurgitating what other people are telling you. And then if you've gone through a system of indoctrination, you're definitely regurgitating because you've been programmed. And then everyone that's gone through the art degrees, the art schools blew up here in the last decade. There's so many. And it's like there's like I said, a million artists around every corner, and it's overwhelming. This is why I don't show anymore. This is why I don't, you know, I'm not having it in those ways anymore, because there's really terrible artists everywhere. But you know, bless their hearts for being creative, if they're being creative for the right reasons.
Or if they are, it's so easy now to create. You know, the tools are there without, you don't have to have much skill to do it anymore.
Right. Oh man, that's a whole different subject. But
Yeah.
you know, I get overwhelmed by how many great. So I'm more overwhelmed by how many great artists there are working, because they did go through a system and learned real tools in specific arts, and or just the creative people that are creative no matter what, and their stuff's all high. They have a sense of quality and a sense of craftsmanship and pride within the work. I'm overwhelmed because there's a great deal of those people out there, but there's just as many terrible artists out there that are selling and making money. And it's, you encounter their stuff and it's like, you know, hot glued this, or I mean, I don't know. I could deconstruct all day long. And behind this whole argument, though, of saturation, which is what it is, a
Mm-hmm.
saturation problem, uh, is the idea of, I do at the core think everyone needs to, one of the keys to unlocking a higher state of consciousness is tapping into your creative self. So I'm 100% one of those people that is saying, yes, this is an essential aspect to evolve, to transcend, to find a deeper meaning out of life, is get creative and allow yourself that space. But if you are, and then this whole like snowflake thing where you're scribbling some terrible pastels on a piece of writing paper where it's not even going to hold up for 3 years, and you don't know anything about adhesives and all this, and you're selling it for $5 to $25 under the guise of art, and you're making money, you're bringing the whole situation down too. And then that becomes the leading focus of everyone's like, well, we're supporting this, look at this person's work, we're supporting this, bless their heart for being creative. Those people, the enablers, are doing them no good. And you see these people on Instagram and on Twitter. I see them all the time because art is always the first thing I click when you sign up for something. Right. And so my feeds are always filled with stuff like that and people making money doing that. And I'm thinking, okay, so they're getting creative, but now they're just doing it to make another $5. And so the creativity actually is gone. The muses have left the building and they're just trying to get that next $5 to $25 for a shitty piece of work.
Yeah, it's so funny you bring up that confluence. I mean, the whole point of this podcast is the confluence between art and, I would say, metaphysics. Occult is just an easier word.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's an umbrella.
Yeah. So, and one thing that really drew me to your work, especially your video stuff, is that I can see that confluence pretty glaringly in a great way. It's almost like I love this is to me this is what the crux of the podcast is talking to people who are very almost devout to their own spiritual, metaphysical path, but are still pragmatic artists and creators and people that channel, right? And not just talk or pontificate, but actually practice and create.
Yeah, especially with my time arts, which is what I call all the video stuff. It's all free. There's no paywall with it. It's all downloadable. It's all usable. I've gotten feedback that there's been some of my music in Russian discos.
That's all. I was gonna say there's some cool like coil, throbbing gristle aspects.
Yeah, well, I come right up out of that school.
Yeah. I love it.
I mean, I'm that age too. These are my peers, and so. But not only that, if you get in person with my paintings, I'm a real painter. But I did formally study painting since I was, I don't know, 15 or something. I like formally studied it in 2 different colleges, both of which I dropped out, and one art school here, PNCA. And so, I'm a good painter. I know I'm a good painter and my stuff stands out. And when you get in person with my paintings, it's not thin or skimpy. It's real. I encourage people to touch everything I make.
Oh, cool.
And then all my embroidery, which I did do professionally for a while in the fashion industry, is the real deal. There's no glue. You see beads on something I did, it's embroidered in. It's not glued. I've encountered that. I've encountered glued on beadwork, Keats. Yeah. It's just so I'm like
dazzled.
How can this be? And if I've sewn something, and I'm not putting down people who use sewing machines. I get it. I understand cottage work. I get it. But I'm just one of those people who likes to hand sew. So I hand sew everything is hand sewn, and I still am charging less when I do it, and when I've done that, way less than stuff that's like being pushed out kind of mill like, right? And here's just like some real stuff. I could go on and on and on. It's just a matter of encountering the work in person. I like to see people's art. I like to get up close to it. I like to observe it. I like to touch it. And I buy art. I buy other people I buy stuff that people make. I support other artists. And, like I just got that ring from JJ from Renda Blanc. Amazing ring. She's a working artist creating real stuff. It's not crazy expensive. And, it's unbelievable work. Meanwhile, next to something like this is going to be some crap that someone bought that was mass produced in China.
Right.
And usually on an occultist hand, because I'm drawn to the unusual jewelry. And so I'll be sitting there with something that was handmade for me by an intense artist that understands balance and color and all this, and create it with their own sweat. And then, I'll be sitting next to one of these facsimiles of an occultist with a Hot Topic ring on. And who will come up and ask questions about magic or art and stuff? It's always going to be the meme next to me.
Right.
You're surprised at how often I will not be approached on these subjects because I'm not advertising it.
Oh, I see. Yeah. And so
I'm not advertising it.
Yeah, that's pretty apparent to me that people would, I don't know. It's not, you're not advertising it. It's not something that I don't think if anyone, really actually looked into it, it'd probably be obvious in a lot of ways,
Well, yeah, of course, with the eyes at sea, but it's still just like,
right.
I did experience this real recently, wink, wink, where there I am, a lifelong occultist, and is sitting there really exalted in my own process. I lived like a hermit. I'm the real deal as far as like inward study and not a facsimile. And I was listening to people next to me that were just like 2 years in, answering deep questions, and I'm listening to, because I'm an observer in the end, and I like to listen to other conversations.
Right. That's
listening to all this bollocks come out of some of these people that were like, I just started practicing 2 years ago, and I mean, just spewing out like secretive stuff, like higher level stuff. So they got their hands on good books, and they're just spewing out this conjuration and that conjuration, and I'm chuckling inwardly.
Yeah. Oof.
Thinking, oh my God. And then looking at the Hot Topic jewelry, and I have been a wicked tongue today.
No, it's great. No, and this stuff I think needs to be serviced. I think there's a lot of fear and within this community, and like we were saying earlier a little bit, that people don't want to kind of say something. And I think that might be, like we were talking about, it comes from, we are on this path of knowing ourselves, and we kind of respect everybody else's journey. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course we must.
Yeah, and so there's a large part of that, but there's also a part of when your praxis, as you'd say, is like becoming sort of goofballed.
Yeah. And we understand the process of, you learn by teaching, that whole chain, right? And This is a big deal. Like when I was teaching tarot classes, I thought I went in, and this is again, late 80s. I thought I went into the first time I was teaching at my temple in Des Moines, the Temple of the Goddess. I thought I was coming from, I'd been practicing for a very long time, doing private tarot readings and all that, as I've already talked about. Mm-hmm. And I was throwing together little tiny classes, just very select few people, and not big. And I thought I went into that thinking that I knew everything that, this is an example of, we all go through this, right? So I went in thinking I really know tarot. Mm-hmm. And I think by even teaching tarot, you kind of come from a place of that. And so, or teaching anything, you kind of come from a place where I think I know this well enough to teach it.
Right.
And so I think, I was in that mode, and I realized real fast into that I had a couple students that came in. I don't want to call them students, they're peers. And they were questioning me and interacting, and of course they knew more than me. And these I think I got tests. I think it was a test from the universe.
Right.
Because they started pointing out new information in a very beautiful and loving way. I might add, it was not terrible. And I had to sit back, and I wasn't defensive about it at all. I will always sit back. I respect an elder, and I don't care what their age is, an elder in knowledge. I respect an elder in knowledge. Right. And so I sat back and took in the information and realized, whoa, I may have been doing tarot this long. I may have read at the time, every book that was out. There wasn't a lot. You had to go to the 20, like the spiritual movement to get some books, and Waite's book, and, and so I had to take a little bit of that humble pie that I'm trying to serve now and eat it, because it's like, here's this one woman in particular. She just absolutely blew me away with different correspondences to particular cards, and with different schools of metaphysical thought. And I had not put those dots together at that time. And so it was that lesson for me at that time, to be cognizant of when you step into the teacher role. For me, ever since then, I have never gone back into a teacher role. I don't feel like I'll ever be. And even at this age, a lot of mystery schools, a lot of schools of thought think like the whole philosophical thing. You don't have the right, I hate to use the word right, it's a strong word, but to even approach being a philosopher, which still makes me gag, by the way, the word. But to approach it until you're 40, that's always been kind of one of those.
Right. That's like the Abram Ellen.
Yes.
Thing, yeah.
It's one of those rules. It's a damn good rule, by the way.
I like it. Yeah.
I love it, because at least you have 40 years, apparent years of walking the earth and fucking up. Right.
Oh yeah.
And so you get perspective, you get, and hopefully you've got some mirth out of it, and you're able to bring something forward. So, but ever since that time, when this one specific lady, I love her. I don't want to mention her name, but she changed my world. I became very close friends with her after that. And I thought, I don't think I ever want to teach anything ever again. And I have not, outside of like when I was doing like beadwork and stuff, like beading class, stuff like that, but not like in the metaphysical realm and in the realm of spirituality. I decided to take a back seat, and I'm going to forever be a student. And part of being a student is also, one is allowed to rant like this.
Right.
One is also allowed to ask questions, because it's the teachers and the gurus that by nature, in and of itself, being exalted in that role, there's something about, you already know everything. Right. There's no questioning happening. And a real guru, of course, we need to parse this out. We need to get this language straight. A real guru doesn't present themselves as one.
Right.
So those people that you encounter that are actually teaching you, and they're not coming from that role, that title over their forehead, those papers on the wall, I graduated from this, so-and-so initiated into me in this, I know this person and that person, and those people, aside from that, it's like that old Asian thing. The real masters are doing your laundry. They're doing the dishes at the restaurant. And these are the ones where if you recognize them, you pull up to them and you take a seat and you listen and you learn and you observe from those people, guaranteed that's where the guru is, and not the one over here selling you a book and a story.
Absolutely. Niish, I think that's a great way to end the show. that was beautiful. Yeah. And I absolutely agree. Real quick, I mean, I wanted to mention that, within this, the perennial student thing,
Yeah.
I think this is why I don't know for sure why you've done yours, but why I do my podcast is for that exact reason. It's free access to thinkers and luminaries, to actually glean information from like yourself,
It's why on my show with Jerry, we don't interpret dreams. I find that irresponsible unless you have a personal relationship with someone, you understand their symbols. There's no such thing aside from the great archetypal symbols that are going to be universal. Your symbols, Keats, are different than mine. Yeah. We might, and so it's irresponsible. So yes, I'm out there trying to find the others. My podcast is about finding others, and it's also about looking at people's personal lives that are in the public somehow in some way in their field. I like getting into a deep dive. Who are you? What are your founding symbols? And let's talk about what you feel on these subjects and how it ties into dreaming and lucidity.
I love it. And that's Nox Mente and now the Obelisk, right?
Well, Nox Mente, it's all Nox Mente, but the Obelisk is our full moon show, which is a separate show, but it's through the umbrella of Nox Mente, which is not about dreams. The Obelisk.
Right. It's more of a kind of
It's general. On the week of the full moon, and it's brand new.
It's great. Yeah. Two episodes so far, I think.
Yeah. 2 moons. Two moons.
Yeah. I think the last one was a Pisces one, right? So.
Yes. I'm loving the new show, by the way. So.
Yeah. It's a fun.
So thank you very much for having me on. And you can find me also if you go to Vox's Nate or noxmente.com and you go to the YouTube channel for Nox Mente, which is Vox's Nate, it says your hosts. And there you can find Niish, and that's my YouTube channel with my personal time art / synthwave / spoken word, the weird videos that we were talking about earlier. So
yeah, and they're fantastic. I can't wait to lead people to you if I can. Otherwise, they're gonna have such a wonderful time listening to the podcast because they really are so good, and I really appreciate your work.
I'm sure I offended a lot of people today.
No, I think it's great, and I think there's something, I don't know, like you were saying, and we'll wrap it on here, but there's a freedom to not being the master all the time,
Mm-hmm.
And like the ability to say what's on your mind and say your piece, I think means far more to me than getting trapped in a belief, right?
Absolutely.
Well, Niish, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Keats. I'm glad to call you a friend.
Yeah, it's been awesome so far. Let's not have this be the last time.
Yeah. More rabble-rousing later.
Exactly. I've got a couple weeks left in Colorado, so maybe we can figure something out.
Excellent.
All right, Niish, thanks.
Thank you, Keats.
There was my wonderful, unedited 2-hour conversation with Niish. A lot of incendiary stuff in there. A lot of potent stuff in there. Our aim isn't to make any enemies or to be judgmental about people's paths, but it was very, cathartic, I think is the word, to kind of discuss about, our common gripes, I guess is another good word, about what we're seeing in the modern state of the culture. What's really cool is I've talked to Carl Abrahamson since then, and we touch about we touch on these subjects a bit. So stay tuned for that, because it's a good companion almost, and a different viewpoint altogether. One that's more like, who gives a fuck, So it's good to have all of those, and it's good to feel things, and it's good to say things that you feel. So I appreciate you, Niish, and I look forward to this relationship. Once again, see you in a couple weeks. Video cast with Carl Abrahamson, and we will be in Denver. So the Portland Weirdo Podcasting Triangle will just have to move to the southwest, or a point of it anyway. Alright, love y'all. Honda.